Right, speaking of Cold Wars, the Cold War for the minute is kind of over in terms of the November series, but the ramifications of it continuing, and of obviously last weekend with Joe Schmidt winning the Ireland doing a bit of a clean sweep at the World Rugby Awards, and then Joe Schmidt hot on the heels of that, Quinny announcing that he was off. Ronan O'Gara has written a piece, his usual piece in the Examiner this morning, and he's touching on the fact that Schmidt has, as the headline says, moved the goalposts like Keane did. So he's moved the needle, in Roger's words, in terms of a nation's psyche when it comes to general sort of preparation and expectation, I suppose.
He has, yeah. Well, look, his achievements have been phenomenal, and I think all sports could probably learn from the success he's had, and I'm sure GAA managers, the soccer managers, the hockey, the cricket, everybody would have an intrigue on how Joe Schmidt has gone about his business and the kind of standard he's set and the detail he puts into it. There's no, like Joe would tell you himself, there's no some secret kind of ingredient here that nobody knows about, and he's just stumbled upon.
What is it's like from everything you hear and read and speak to people about, this obsessiveness is the thing that keeps coming back. Is that it?
Yeah, I think, look, obviously he's a very intelligent rugby man, and probably the time and the effort that he puts into it, it sounds very kind of a given that you're a head coach and you give loads of time to it. I'm sure all managers in all sports and our coaches at that level will put a lot of time into it. But I just think he's a real knack of evolving all the time and finding new ways of doing things. And some of the fundamentals are quite simple. It's know your role inside out. Your work rate has to be 100%, and so it's not a secret kind of ingredient that nobody knows anything about. And I've said this, he said it, he's a workaholic. So it's finding that detail. And I suppose if you're sitting down at a lot of information, it's having an ability to pick through stuff and find little angles and little ways of doing things. And then for him to manage the group, and he is quite relentless. And I think the players would have a fear factor around him. And he's created that environment where they're actually fearful, and it's good fear in a way that it makes them just not be any bit lackadaisical about their job. And it's just a given. You have to know your role inside out. And when I played, there's certain elements of the game that you know about your own detail, and you might be, kick chases or kick retreats or stuff like that might not involve you at certain parts of the game, but under a Joe Schmidt type coaching system, you have to know everything about every player, and particularly the opposition, if there's a weakness or a vulnerability. And that's the intrigue that he's brought that to a different level. And look, there's a lot of really intelligent coaches, and to coach a team or a system at that level, you have to be good. But I think he just finds a way of finding detail and weakness in opposition. He's had his critics. Sometimes the team hasn't been that flashy or open in the way they've played. But I think, particularly after the World Cup in 15 and maybe parts of 16, they evolved more, and they were able to add more to their attacking game, which has been very impressive. And in fact, their attack in the last 2 years has been of a high quality. They're scoring a lot of tries. We always hear about these starter plays, or these kind of plays he has off lineouts or scrums. Their first phase, we saw an example of one with Stockdale scoring the try against New Zealand, and we saw one in Twickenham against England where Tadhg Furlong does the little wrap and just pops it short to Aki running that great line, and then Stander scores. So he has an ability of finding a way of scoring tries in crucial games. The worry sometimes I have with Ireland is if they go behind and they have to start chasing and play off the cuff. They're not an off the cuff team. They're very structured.
On that, so Andy Farrell, right, is clearly has a career and an amazing CV of high achieving and high capability, right? Like, that's not in question. But he is not a Joe Schmidt type character. So O'Gara talks about the sustainability of this thing, and he actually is very positive about this is all sustainable into the long term. Is it though?
I think the transition is smooth, and that's good. He's been in the system. The players are used to working at high intensity and being in that role of putting all that time and effort into it. There's terminology used with teams, and this is probably something that people don't realise sometimes. If, like, when Donegal Ryan left Munster and had to come back and play Munster that year in the European Cup, which invariably happens when someone leaves, they get drawn in the Heineken Cup, they've got to change all their lineouts. They've got to change maybe the wording of some of their attack, because he knows that inside out, and you have to kind of go again and find different names and different ways of maybe doing things, whether it be attack or defence.
Was it easier for you, Quinny, to adjust when you were playing for Declan at Munster and then Ireland with Eddie?
It was different, you know.
So will it be different now with Andy Farrell? And like, I'm just trying to, I suppose, get to the crux of it. Like, Joe, it seems to me to be one of a million. Andy Farrell could be an extremely good coach, but he's not Joe Schmidt. Is that, or does that, for the player, is it really that important with the coach?
No, it is, and I think he has to be different, because he can't do it the exact same way Joe has done it, because maybe the players will say, well, look, you're only going off a template here. He has to come with his own ideas, and sometimes that opens up a coach to evolve themselves and try things. Like, the fundamentals will be very similar, and for any head coach now, for me in rugby, it's important the team to have underneath him. So Simon needs to be doing the line-outs, Greg Feek is leaving, so they need to get a good scrum coach. Their attack, Richie Murphy does the kicking, so a lot of that will stay the same, but they need a good attack. And will Andy Farrell do some of the defence? I'm sure he will. Will he be on field? I would imagine that he'd like to be in the shorts and out on the field, because that's what he's used to. Not every head coach, they tend to stand back and let their team do it. So the involvement, it's different, John. You know, you provincially, you have your own calls, your own stuff, and usually, because of the international stuff is shorter blocks, you probably don't have enough time. Sometimes it's simplified. We often hear that the way Warren Gatland got Wales to play and has got them to play over the years is very simple, same way, and they try to outmaneuver teams with physical intensity and fitness and all that kind of stuff. Like rugby, there's no rocket science to rugby. It's you know, it's a collision sport. You get on top physically, your breakdown is good, and sometimes after a couple of phases, the ideal is that you let guys play and natural ability kicks in. So, but the fundamentals of certain types of calls and certain ways of attacking and tailoring your team to the skill levels of Irish players now, like, we're not a forward-dominated Orient side where we've good players across the board. They can play a number of ways. So Andy Farrell has to be different. He has to put his own stamp on it to kind of earn that tag as the boss with the players. He probably has to separate himself a little bit from, you know, sitting down with the boys or chatting to them in the corridors or having a bit of crack, where assistants are in a bit more of a relaxed situation. You know, the head coach is the one who has to call out the team. He has to go after guys in videos. He has to drop guys. He has to pick guys.
I presume part of his gig would have been that anyway. Like, you know, people famously talk about the Schmidt sessions and he's calling them out on videos, but I'm assuming that Andy Farrell,
of course, his defensive stuff. Yeah, like Ireland's defence has, and sometimes I've looked back in a lot of the matches over the years, and defensively, Ireland have shown a vulnerability in the wider channels, and I try to look at it and think, is it a system error? Is it the defence coach's fault? Is it individual errors? A lot of the time it's individual errors, and it's probably the hardest part to defend sometimes. You know, if guys are running around the side of breakdowns, like you're in tighter channels, you've support inside, it's those from 13 out where sometimes you're a bit isolated. Do you come up and in? Do you stay out? And that's where Ireland have showed a bit of fragility, and systematically I think the system is good and they defend really well. I thought the way they defended against New Zealand was superb, because I'd say New Zealand expected them to rush up on the outside and try and close off the space, but in fact they pushed up really hard in that 10 channel and they showed New Zealand a little bit of space and stayed very connected. So look, the way rugby has gone nowadays, attacks have improved and we're seeing a lot of tries in matches, thankfully. And Ireland have conceded a fair few tries over the years, but I just think the inspirational factor of Andy Farrell is the one thing that players keep saying, that he inspires people. Like, I interviewed him for Sky 2 years ago in South Africa, and his first time being involved with the team, And genuinely, if you walked in here, there's a presence about Andy Farrell, and I like that in a coach. You know, you know that this guy means business. He's friendly, he's calm, he's good crack, he's old school a little bit. He'll have a beer. He's chilled out. But if you cross the line with him and you don't put in the shift, because he's come from an environment where it's hard, it's abrasive. At 17, he's playing rugby league in the mid-90s. As a kid, effectively, there wasn't much disciplinary kind of control.
And also was a father at a very young age.
16. He was 16 and 4 months. I'm doing a piece tomorrow on him, and so I was doing a bit of research on that. At 16, to be a dad, and all that kind of stuff. To be captain of Great Britain at 21 and captain of Wigan, I just think as a 21-year-old, to lead, like there was a lot of older Wigan guys in that team, hard, abrasive guys who played for Great Britain, and they were tough nuts, like. And here's a 21-year-old has the ability to talk and speak in the dressing room and be a leader. Now, that doesn't guarantee the massive success, but I think what he's done in the last couple of seasons, and I like the way that he loves a challenge, so he liked this challenge. He liked people throwing in a few question marks and saying, he's the head coach now, and
yeah, you have to relish it when you're taking that thing on. You have to. You can't be apprehensive about it. One final one, just before, because I want to move on and talk to you about Munster and Conor Murray's return and all that. You said you're running tomorrow in the Irish Independent. You have a couple of thoughts, just briefly, if you will, on who might make up the backroom staff, because that's obviously where the conversation is going now.
Well, the obvious one then is with Stuart Lancaster move from Leinster up. It'd be great. I think he's a fantastic coach.
But it'd be not strange though if they were reversing roles from 15.
Absolutely, and that's the problem, John. I think I'm not sure, Stuart. I'm not speaking with knowledge here that I've spoken to him or anything. I don't know, would he do that? He might. He's kind of reinvented himself since he's come to Leinster. I think he probably wants to be a head coach at some stage, and take the reins himself, Stuart Lancaster. So it would be strange that it would be role reversal and we'd have the two from England's failure at the World Cup in 2015. The other one is Ronan O'Gara. I think he keeps saying that he's waiting and he's not sure if what he's doing yet, and he's enjoying the moments with the Crusaders. Obviously he's heading back there to do another 7 months with them, and but I think, look, someone like Ronan, you'd want him to get back involved with one of the provinces anyway. I think there is a role, but Andy Farrell might pull someone from the UK himself. He might fancy somebody else in Ireland. I'm sure they'll look through it. I think it's important that, and I'm sure, look, when Joe Schmidt went and got Andy Farrell, I thought, to be fair, Joe
challenging himself,
but he analyses everything so much. That he would have analysed that situation and really done his due diligence on Andy Farrell. What's he like? In 2013, when he went to the Lions, the Irish guys came back and said, wow, this fella's phenomenal, he's inspiring. And then Joe goes and gets him, and I think he's done incredibly well. Of course there's some question marks, and how do you replace someone like Joe Schmidt? It's very difficult.
Sure, impossible, The
one thing he likes is a challenge, Andy Farrell, and I like the way he reinvented himself after that World Cup, and he's faced challenges all his life in his rugby league career and his rugby, and he's just hard. I like him because he's old school a little bit as well, but he's very intelligent, and I think he'd be a really good choice for Ireland.
All right, we will be back to this conversation. You can be absolutely certain. Here are the games that are upcoming this weekend, because we're going to get your thoughts on some of this good stuff, particularly that Munster game tonight, 7:35. That's Airsport 1, as is Connacht tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and then over on Airsport 2 at the same time tomorrow, Ulster up against the Blues, and then Dragons against Leinster on Saturday evening on Airsport 1. So that Munster-Edinburgh game tonight, Quinny, Murray, O'Mahony, Byrne, Earls, Conway, Farrell, all back in, and I suppose whatever about Murray and Farrell, who are just back, obviously coming back after relatively long-term injuries, they haven't sort of taken the temptation to rest any of these sort of big names. They want to get them in ahead of next weekend.
Yeah, I think, look, they want to, obviously the back-to-back games against Cass are coming up, and the other provinces are facing back-to-back games as well, and it's always an intriguing challenge, mentally and physically. Playing a team once, you get a good win one week, you could lose. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, and it shows that it's a psychological thing as much as a physical or physical thing.
If you're Peter O'Mahony, Quinny, is it hard to have such euphoria about beating the All Blacks and then play Edinburgh without any disrespect to Edinburgh in the Pro 14?
It is.
Is it to constantly try and lift yourself? You've had a month of November internationals, and now you're back to the bread and butter.
It is, yeah. But that's what makes great players, when they have that standard for themselves, and that doesn't happen, that you make a decision to go, I'm up for this game, and well, this one's a bit more relaxed and it's easier. How do I approach it? Emotion is a really important part of rugby, because of that physical sense. You got to be physical. Like if Peter O'Mahony goes out tonight and he's a little bit, 10% off, well, the Edinburgh boys, his opposition number 6 will be hammering into him, and it doesn't go well when that happens. So it's very difficult to have that emotion really high. But I think someone like Peter he's a really good standard. He's the type of fella, even at training, he's 100%, and what makes him have that bit of edge like Paul O'Connell would have had. And I would have been a typical example of playing international, and maybe sometimes you don't consciously make the decision, but you're just a little bit more relaxed, and suddenly you're 20 minutes into the game and you've missed a tackle and you've physically been blown out of a ruck, and because and that can happen. Paul was brilliant at that, with laying it on the line. Roger's really good at it. This game, if we don't do X, Y, and Z, they're going to come 110% at us. So I think someone like Peter, he wouldn't have played against Italy. He would have played the RG and New Zealand game. So he's had a week off last week as well. So mentally, physically, he's got to get himself right now for the Munster Challenge.
Conor Murray, everybody's obviously excited to see him back and get back into it. His first start, obviously, since his return from injury, I think. And ahead of a couple of big weekends. It's not with Joey Carberry, which everybody is really sort of fascinated to see how that partnership goes, but it's JJ Hanrahan this weekend. But the importance of Murray's return.
It's fantastic for them. Obviously, there was so much speculation about when he would be back, and
why he was away and all.
Yeah, and I think, look, some of it is silly, the rumours and stuff like that. I think it could have been clarified a little bit better about the. I think everybody knew it was a neck injury, but then when Johan van Graan mentioned that, look, he doesn't want to talk about it or he can't comment on it, I don't think he had to get into specifics. He could have just maybe handle that a little bit better. And obviously at the time he probably didn't realise that it would fuel a bit of speculation and some silly rumours. The player has had the injury for probably the guts of 17 or 18 months. It happened in Cardiff, from what I gather, in the Six Nations. I don't know if you remember that game where we lost in the Six Nations. Murray and Sexton were kind of ruffled up a little bit. Conor went off with a neck injury, and he managed that. And at the start of pre-season, I think they wanted to try and fix it and do something about it. There was speculation of an operation. They got a second opinion, and it was thought to rehab it. He didn't know when he would be back, and that's probably was the time frame issue. It was going to be sometime around November, but some of the speculation, and look, I can understand, from when you're a high-profile player like that, people want to know what the nature of the injury is, and they want to, particularly the Munster fans and the Irish fans would have wanted to know, well, will he be back for the All Blacks? And that target was kind of there. If you go back to Jamie Heaslip's injury, there was a lot of Chinese whispers there about the nature of the injury and what it was, and was there something else going on, which can happen when you don't want to release your data. We saw Dan Levy did it a couple of weeks ago as well, when he pulled out for the All Blacks game. It's a weird
position.
Just careful the way that thing is handled, because obviously when you're working in the media, you want to know, you want to report.
Well, it's right that you would ask the questions. Like, there shouldn't be any insinuation that the media aren't entitled to ask the question, or like there's a lot of worrying trends in that direction.
Look, you're trying to it's the fans that want to know, really. Why aren't they playing? And I suppose they don't have to get into the specific. The really specifics of the injury. If it's a hamstring injury, it's a hamstring injury. We're not sure when we're back, or vice versa, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, because it's going to be a bizarre scene where players are going to say they're injured. We don't know how long they're going to be back in. We can't talk about what the injury is. Like, it's just a new.
Yeah. Well, what frustrates me sometimes is the way the rumour mill starts. And like, I've had people asking me about Conor Murray.
Well, surely a player doesn't want to be injured.
No,
surely a player doesn't want to be out for 3 months or miss the Guinness series or miss the All Blacks game. If he's injured, he's injured. Sure, you know, so vacuums get filled. But I suppose we don't want it to turn into the PGA Tour when you don't know what's going on, or when players go missing for a couple of months, or why was he missing? Well, that's PGA Tour rules. We can't make it public or whatever. Yeah, vacuums can get filled, but I'm sure.
And I think that could have been handled right at the start, John, where there was a statement: Conor Murray has a neck injury. Yeah. We don't know when he's going to be back.
We'll tell you when he's back. Yeah.
Here's what's happening. He's rehabbing. Blah blah blah. So I don't even think it was the speculation that Conor didn't want anybody knowing anything the nature of the injury. I think he didn't know himself, and he said that when he was kind of rolled out to the media. But I think it's important that, you know, the public needs some information. They don't need to know the specifics. I think it's great to see him back. He's just going to be, it's kind of like a new signing for them, you know.
Are they going to win tonight?
I think they will. Look, they haven't played that well this year, John, and I think even in the Champions Cup game against Gloucester and Limerick, they, you know, by their own admission, they were quite poor. They're a bit like Liverpool at the moment, where there's more in them, and they just haven't got that good, perfect performance yet. And I think they have a better squad this year, haven't they? You know, having Farrell back is like a new signing. They have a fair bit of Tyburn has been a revelation, in fairness. So they have a lot of good players. And you look at the back three tonight: Haley, Conway, Earls. If you can get those guys a bit of ball, they're very, very dangerous. And Conway showed that last week. So it's a good side, but it's an important couple of weeks for all the provinces.
Yeah. Are they all going to win this weekend?
Well, I think so. Look, if you look at Munster home, Ulster home, I think Leinster will win away in Dragons. You know, they're very strong. Connacht against the Cheetahs, you just don't know sometimes how strong the Cheetahs will be in South Africa, but I think you're probably looking at 4 wins.
Quinny, thanks a million for that. Worth repeating that obviously the players that we were speaking about, there's no insinuation that anything untoward had happened, and clearly none of them have been involved in any of those rumours that have been doing the rounds. Quinny is going to be back with us on Monday morning. We're at Kildare Village for OTB AM from 7:15. Ger's going to be there, Quinny will be there, Andy Dunn will be there, and Johnny Ward. And picking through the weekend of sport. That's at 7:15 Monday morning, Kildare Village.